It's time to get ready for GE 2025. But instead of diving straight into statistics, polls, and political commentary, we're doing something a little bit different today. Something a little more intuitive. We're turning to tarot. Yep, tarot cards. Now, before you roll your eyes or assume that we're predicting who wins what, hang on, that's not the point. This episode isn't about prophecy, it's about perspective. Now, think of this as a fun and reflective way to help you remember what you should know, but through a completely different format. Because while elections are serious business, how we learn about them doesn't always have to be. Joining me is someone whose readings I personally enjoyed. Elaine Mok, also known as Tarot on the Moon. Her tarot work is all about reframing, storytelling, and making sense of uncertainty. We'll be pulling cards for 5 segments: the ruling PAP, the leading opposition WP, the rising star PSP, the ever-persistent SDP, and other parties that could shake things up. So, what do the cards say about leadership transitions, political baggage, and election energy? Let's find out. All right, let's start with the People's Action Party, the ruling party that has shaped Singapore since independence. They've been in power for over 6 decades, but with each election, the political landscape shifts just a little more. The PAP has also been facing pressure on multiple fronts: rising cost of living, evolving voter expectations, and the challenge of staying connected to a new generation of Singaporeans. They've also recently faced a rare wave of political scandals, including that of the high-profile resignations of Tan Chuan Jin and Cheng Li Hui over an extramarital affair, as well as the corruption probe into S. Iswaran, which ultimately led to him being sentenced to 12 months jail. 2024 also marked a milestone of change with the transition of leadership for the party, with Lawrence Wong taking over as PM. GE 2025 will be the PAP's first general election under PM Wong's leadership. So, what do the cards reveal about the PAP entering this race? Strong and steady, or with something to prove? How is the PAP positioned going into this election with PM Wong as its leader?
How is the PAP positioned under Lawrence Wong's new leadership, right? Okay, so 3 of Wands. Over here, you can see a figure in the foreground, and they look very strong, actually. So even with all of the dialogue surrounding Lawrence Wong, there still seems to be a lot of confidence. But I do feel like it might be because PAP is already so established, right? So we can see what's missing here is the person is alone. So what is missing is potentially support from the people around him. So there needs to be a lot of faith that is coming from the PAP themselves to push themselves forward to reaffirm their position. But I do feel like a lot of it is it's just self-motivated, self-driven. But the good thing about the 3 of Wands in the PAP's favor is that it's a very ambitious card. It has leeway already established because it's a number 3. 3 is the number of expansion, actually. And it has a lot of hope. That's why the person is looking forward. There's a lot of distance that they're hoping to cover. Yeah, just a lot of ambition, a lot of confidence, but it's really coming from the inside. There is potentially doubt and challenges on the outside, and that's why there are mountains around in the landscape as well. That's the general vibe. I can always
Right.
pull one more if you want
Let's
to
do that,
clarify.
yeah.
2 of Pentacles. Okay, so 2 of Pentacles over here. This is a card about balance and specifically balancing resources, actually. So Pentacles is the suit of time, energy, money. So the way that they delegate their resources is going to be very important. I think the key word here is really strategy. So we have ambition, but we also need strategy. And what's interesting is that we have 2 and 3, right? So tarot, we always look at it as 1 to 10, like a journey that starts from 1 and ends in number 10. So when we have the earlier numbers, they're also actually trying to strategize. They're still at the almost beginning stages, actually. I think they're having to refine their grounding. Like there has been a bit of instability, so they're trying to figure out what their new angle is. It's not as established as it was in the past because it's not like we're getting the larger numbers. When we get earlier numbers, there is a fair bit of uncertainty. There's a fair bit of trying to reshuffle their priorities. Yeah, this strategy is going to be interesting because budgeting, like when I look at Pentacles, I think of the budget, and perhaps it's also the way that they budget that might sway people over to their side. Like, who doesn't love getting money in their bank account, right? For the most random reasons, doesn't really matter. So yeah, that's going to be one of their strengths. But definitely re-envisioning. Yeah, it's not like as it was in the past. It's not to be taken for granted.
Right.
Yeah.
Every party faces obstacles, even one as dominant as the PAP. Now, whether it's public sentiment, opposition pressure, or shifting ground concerns like the cost of living and housing, this GE might not be a walk in the park. What challenges might surface for the PAP this GE 2025?
Ooh, okay, so this is interesting. One of the challenges here is the Queen of Wands. So Queen of Wands has to do with instilling enthusiasm and confidence in people. So I did mention earlier that the PAP internally might have confidence within themselves, especially the people in power. But I do sense a potential disjunct because Queen of Wands is about inspiring others. It's a very deep sense of faith that, oh, this person or this party can do well. So that's going to be a challenge that they have to confront. The other challenge is actually innovation from the Ace of Swords. So Ace of Swords can even be digital innovation as well. It can be literally related to technology, but more broadly, it's about doing things differently, inspiring people in an alternative way. So just showing a different side to themselves. Queen of Wands is a bit of a cheerleader kind of vibe as well. She's very fun. She's really very high energy. So I think one of the challenges they might face is being relevant to a younger generation, showing that, hey, like, not just we understand your needs, but we are people who are not say fun, but are more relatable. Like, come to our side because like we know what's up, you know. So that's going to be a challenge that they're facing. And technology comes in, I believe it could be through social media, but it could also just be through communication because Swartz rules all kinds of communication. So even watching out for the wording, the way that they phrase things, yeah, just being more inspiring, exciting people and getting them to come over to the PAP side.
The PAP always unveils a fresh batch of candidates. Some become breakout stars, others not so much. Shout out to Ivan Lim. Now, with Gen Z and younger millennials making up a big chunk of the electorate this time, the stakes are higher than ever. Will these new faces click with the young voters, or is there potential for a repeat of past issues?
So it's interesting. We do have the Page of Pentacles here. So pages do represent youth, young people, adolescents, but also young adults potentially. But the person looks a little bit bored. Like they don't look super engaged. This is actually like my face when I'm brain rotting on my phone. So I think there is appeal, but it's not in a huge rah-rah kind of way. It's more of okay, like we get that this is what you're for. Maybe we don't have super strong feelings about other parties, and then we just go with you because it makes sense. It's the de facto, it's the default. So that's more of the vibe that I'm getting from the Page of Pentacles. And Empress is interesting because Empress represents mothers actually. So you might want to look into PAP and what their maybe maternity leave or things that are related to parenting, raising children. I would also put education in, but more of parenting and like the early stages of childhood. I think it would be interesting to see what their policies are related to that, because if they're pushing out something that is different from what they've been saying before, they might really appeal to parents, moms especially, because the Empress card is here. Women as well. So women's rights also falls under Empress. So if the PAP decides they want to be a little bit more feminist this time round or to have stronger views in that area, they really might swing. They might get people who were on the fence on their side. Yeah, so those are the demographics that I'm seeing so far.
Right. Could that maybe even relate to like female candidates?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Because we have Queen here, we have Queen, we have Empress, and sometimes the page is also known as a princess. So we have quite femme-coded cards. And of course, gender is not a binary, but definitely these cards do have more feminine associations. So I do see women being more persuasive, but also women being persuaded, and they can also come together as well. Because
Right.
naturally, if you are a woman and you see representation, you might be more inclined to believe that, oh, this party is aligned with what I stand for.
Corruption, scandals, and affairs. The last few years have brought rare public scrutiny onto the PAP. For a party that prides itself on integrity, these incidents shook things up. But how lasting is the damage? Let's pull the cards to see if these scandals still cast a shadow over their GE 2025 performance.
Whether the political scandals can have a significant impact on their performance. Okay, so the main impact is in the faith and the confidence. So Ace of Wands, right? Aces are always like yes cards. When we ask a yes, no question, we get an ace. They do tend to be yes. So yes, it will have a significant impact, but it will not show so much in terms of perhaps the grand scheme of things, because Pentacles deals with like a longer time, and Four of Pentacles is stability. So actually their journey in the long run still feels fairly stable for the time being, but what is being impacted is people's confidence in them. But confidence is in itself kind of shaky as well, right? Confidence can be restored, confidence can be taken away. So there's quite a bit of gray area for the PAP to work with. And from what I see, because the Four of Pentacles is here, there's still long-term stability for the time being. Yeah, depends on what's long for you may not be long for me, right? But I think for this GE, it still feels fairly stable for the PAP. Fairly, not as strong as it was in the past, but generally speaking, when we look at like global politics, still fairly stable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finally, let's zoom out. What do the cards say about the PAP's overall trajectory going into GE 2025?
Okay. So overall trajectory, overall summary. Oh, this is interesting. We have Magician and we have the Ace of Pentacles. So both of these cards actually, when combined together, is success still. Yeah. But of course, I think political success can have so many definitions, right? And what is a success to PAP? Maybe they have different standards from the general public, but generally speaking, with Magician over here especially, it's the will to make things happen. And it shows that they have a very strong vision of what they want, even with all of the internal shuffling and everything. But the overarching vision is very strong. And Ace of Pentacles says that it's grounded in reality. So they can actually make what they want happen. Yeah, that's quite powerful, actually. Yeah, to have this particular combination together. So one more thing as well, I told you earlier, Pentacles has a longer time frame. So their version of success is also in the long run as well. So even if, let's say, they lose seats, this particular GE, it might not impact their larger trajectory, like the plans that they have for Singapore's future in the next 50 years, 100 years. Who knows what the PAP is actually planning on the inside, right? But definitely they are in it for the long run, and they have very, very, very strong vision and willpower and good resources to make things happen.
Very nice. Thank you. Next, let's turn our attention to the Workers' Party, Singapore's largest opposition party. Over the years, the WP has made significant inroads, notably securing multiple seats in Parliament. In 2011, they won Aljunied GRC, the first GRC to be won by the opposition, a huge watershed moment. The party made history again in 2020 by winning a second GRC in Sengkang GRC, with a popular team that included star candidate James Lim, who won over the cockles of many Singaporeans' hearts during a televised debate. However, the journey hasn't been without challenges. In 2023, MP Leon Pereira and senior party member Nicole Seah resigned following revelations of an extramarital affair. And in 2021, Raisa Khan admitted to lying in Parliament, which led to her resignation as MP. Recently, WP leader Pritam Singh was found guilty of 2 charges of lying to Parliament, although this doesn't disqualify him from contesting in this GE. As the biggest opposition party, they've got name recognition, loyal constituencies, and quite a bit of street cred. So what do the cards suggest about what they need to do this GE to gain more ground? What strategies should they lean into?
Okay, so basically what strategies that can help them to navigate the political landscape?
Yep.
Justice is interesting because of all the trials that have been happening. We know that Pritam Singh recently just came off his trial, right? So there definitely needs to be an addressing and redressing of all of these legal related issues. I think it has left an impact on the public's consciousness. Devil as well, secrets, things that were hidden. And we know Workers' Party was literally the subject of certain scandals, extramarital scandals. So when we have justice and devil, I would say the main strategy that they should focus on now is trying to convince people why they're still morally upright, actually. There's a sense of morality and principle over here, because I think people who vote for the Workers' Party already have a pretty strong belief system. To vote alternative, you need to have some kind of I guess, self-certainty because you're not going with the default, right? So the main angle for them to go for now, instead of focusing more on like we are presenting an alternative side, is to focus more on how you can still trust us as a party. We still have I guess, morals that you can resonate with. And I'm not saying this to preach, right? Everybody has personal morals, but I'm talking about what the Workers' Party believes to be their morals, their moral standard. Yeah, so there needs to be a redressing of those issues. And I think the legal stuff that has been happening, it won't go away so soon. I don't think it can be swept under the rug so easily. I feel like it's going to be a specter that's haunting them, definitely for this GE, maybe even after that, because Devil very clingy. Devil doesn't let go very easily. So yeah, they will definitely have to keep addressing those points.
In 2020, names like James Lim and Raisa Khan caused so much buzz online, especially among young voters. With new candidates expected this time around, the WP has a chance to capture the imagination again. Will lightning strike twice? Let's see what the cards have to say about whether this new slate will resonate.
Yeah, so actually really interesting you mentioned Raisha Khan, because I was talking about during the PAP segment earlier how maybe showing more women and airing out women's voices and perspectives might actually gain them more favor. And over here, we also have a pretty feminine presence, but older actually. So it's not like Nicole Seah when she first broke out. It's not that kind of young debutante sort of vibe. But the Queen of Swords is someone who is more seasoned, more mature. They've been in the game for a while. They actually are not the most charismatic. This person is someone who's more of a voice of reason, someone who feels trustworthy, and they feel quite logical. And they might even give off a bit of a critical vibe as well, but then all the more it makes you want to listen to them because it feels like she knows her stuff. So this kind of person potentially could come out. And even if it's not specifically a woman, it's still those qualities of someone who's very reasonable, head on their shoulders, very logical. And I think this will be very helpful with addressing those legal issues, right? Justice came out. We have the Queen of Swords. They're both holding swords. So that's sort of the energy that they could foreground. And then with the Five of Wands here, because you asked whether it will make a significant impact having new faces. Honestly, Five of Wands, I would say not so much. I think with the Five of Wands, it's competition, so it might be hard for people to actually distinguish certain people from others. You know, sometimes politicians, they might just come, especially when they wear the same color, you know, like everyone kind of bleeds into the same image. So with the Five of Wands, especially when it's lacking a charismatic focal point, which I feel like is Worker Party now, like what they're going through, it might be challenging for new faces to be the sway factor or the decisive factor to bring people over to the WP side. Yeah, so I wouldn't bank too much on having like a cult of personality per se happening for the Workers' Party. Not this time round. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, to be fair, the James Lim thing, it was really lightning in a bottle.
It
you
really
know?
was.
Yeah.
Puckles, right?
Yeah, everything just fell so nicely in place for him, so yeah.
Lastly, let's see what the cards have to say about the WP's overall trajectory this GE 2025.
Oh, they will be able to find a strong leader, whether it's in Pritam or whoever else that they are trying to push. Ultimately, they will be able to consolidate because of the King of Pentacles. And this one is a man. Yeah, so I think the big leader of the party feels more masculine still. And we have the Four of Swords here. It's about lying low, actually, is about resting. So even as they are trying to kind of save their image, it's a bit more measured, yeah, than maybe what we're used to seeing the WP doing from the past GE. So they're trying to lay low in terms of, I would say, the scandal side of things, but they will be able to consolidate leadership, and leadership will actually become stronger over time. Yeah.
Now let's look at Progress Singapore Party, or the PSP. Founded by Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, the PSP quickly made its mark in Singapore's political landscape. In their debut in GE 2020, they achieved a notable result in West Coast GRC, which entitled them to 2 NCMP seats, which were taken up by Haizul Phua as well as Leong Man Wai. Recently, the party experienced several leadership changes. Notably, Leong Man Wai resigned in February 2024 following a correction order under POFMA, and Haizul Phua took over the role. This year, in March 2025, Mr. Leong was re-elected as the party's leader in preparation for GE 2025. As NCMPs, they've both been loud and bold. Does that visibility translate into actual political impact? What do the cards say about their time as NCMPs and how that has shaped public perception on the PSP?
Oh, actually, yes, because we have an Ace of Pentacles here, and I told you aces are yes, and 10 of Pentacles as well, which is about security, community, longevity. So I would say they have made an impact. But again, the funny thing about Pentacles is that it's delayed gratification sometimes. So it might not show up so evidently, but I feel like some of the words that they've said or the perspectives that they put out have touched some people and actually gave them quite strong supporters, especially for people who are not buying into the PAP WP binary, right?
Right.
So I do feel like they have managed to gain strong supporters. It's just that the impact of it is going to take a while to bear fruit.
Right.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
the thing.
my personal opinion is that I think it's just even visibility of them being in parliament that is not a PAP face, right?
Yeah.
I think that helps the PSP have legitimacy in the eyes of the people. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and it's a very stable kind of vibe. Yeah, Pentacles, the element is earth. So earth is so unshakable, right? So they have actually a very stable foundation to keep growing as a party. Yeah, good leadership actually with the PSP.
Dr. Tan Cheng Bok is to PSP what Steve Jobs is to Apple. He's their founder, their icon, and is still a huge crowd puller. Now let's see what the cards say about how his influence might shape PSP's GE 2025.
Oh, we have this leadership card again, King of Pentacles. So this is the card that represents strong leader, people, someone that people rely on. So Tanjung Bok, I think he does continue to act as a bedrock of sorts, like a foundation. People still look up to him within the party, maybe even outside as well for whoever is voting for his party, right? But the Fool is also interesting. This is a wild card. So Tanjung Bok, maybe he himself is a wild card. He might perhaps say something out of pocket or he might present something different. I think this altogether, it offers an opportunity for the PSP to try something a little bit different and set them apart from other parties because the Fool is really about doing things differently. Yeah, it might not seem like the most strategic party, but actually it works in their favor because it helps them to stand out, like to kind of say or do something a little bit crazy or at least a little bit different. Yeah, so that is Tan Cheng Bok's influence. But what I see here is actually at heart, he's quite traditional. I think this Fool card might be influencers around him. It might be people advising him, or perhaps he just wants to try a different strategy. But actually, at heart, still pretty traditional in terms of values and the kind of leader that he is, the kind of system that he's envisioning.
With the Iswaran case shaking things up in the West, it might just give PSP a leg up. The region also loses a powerhouse PAP opponent in Mr. Tharman, who is now the president and can no longer run in the GE. Now, what guidance do the cards offer on how PSP should navigate this effectively?
So how they should take into account Iswaran's case
Yeah.
in their strategy.
Yeah.
Oh, capitalize on it. I'm just kidding. Maybe not capitalize, but because we have Cups over here, Knight of Cups and the Ace of Cups. Cups has to do with feelings and emotions. I know earlier I said it's not about taking an overly emotional approach, but for this, because Iswaran specifically, I think it did elicit feelings of betrayal, so they can actually use it to their advantage. And how they do that is showing that, hey, like, look, we are the people whom you can trust, right? Like you can like really have faith in us. And then with the Ace of Cups, it's a yes card. So it would actually be really advantageous if they could use this opportunity to boost their own image. Yeah. Knight of Cups also is about appealing to people. This one is a little bit more popular. So popular, I'm saying that because I'm comparing, for example, the King of Pentacles and the Knight of Cups. This one is the leader who is stable, but sometimes taken for granted. Knight of Cups represents a figure who is more I would say charismatic in that sense. So they can actually discuss this, they can bring this up in public, and people might actually be on their side. So this is one issue that they have. Maybe that's the Fool moment. It's like the unexpected turning point for them, right? So they would be wise to at least make a mention of it during their run. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, how is PSP positioned among opposition parties, especially in light of new alliances forming? With rumblings of opposition unity, from joint walkabouts to potential seat arrangements, how does the PSP fit into the wider opposition chessboard? Are they seen as collaborators, competitors, or lone wolves? Let's see how the cards rate their standing among the opposition.
Okay, so we have Six of Swords here. There might be a shift in how they have to position themselves. And I don't actually see it about joining the alliance. I don't think they necessarily have to be subsumed into a larger group, but it's more of trying to make themselves stand out. They're really forging their own path. That's why the person is on his own boat sailing away. So they really have to find a way to differentiate themselves from the other party so that people remember who they are. And High Priestess over here is saying that they're also trying to figure things out. Like High Priestess is a very introspective, intuitive card. So there's a lot that we also don't see in the public. And with High Priestess over here, it's also saying that this is a party who, like, they really have to trust their own gut feeling. And I know it sounds a bit strange because when we think of politics, we think of numbers and statistics, we think of probabilities, right? But then you have instances like James Lim, for example, and it's just so out of pocket. So what the PSP can do is really, instead of trying to control everything too much, it's also just observing first and then trusting like their own gut feeling of how to proceed to make themselves stand out from the other opposition parties or any other alliances that may be in the landscape. Yeah.
That's fair.
Lastly, what do the cards have to say about their overall trajectory this GE? Is the PSP poised to turn their momentum into seats, or will the GE be a test of their staying power?
Ooh, they're going places. I think they will get more, they'll make more headway because of the Eight of Wands. Like they will be able to make pretty substantial progress and expand actually. And whatever they already have footing in, they can continue to progress. And then with the Six of Pentacles over here, but this card is interesting. As you see, it's like giving and taking, right? So there might be small sacrifices along the way. So maybe they gain more in some areas, but then they lose in others. So there's going to be a bit of a balancing game. But generally speaking, there is a lot of enthusiasm, and that can actually bring them pretty far. Yeah, but small sacrifices.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I mean, I think everybody looks at elections and think of success as winning seats, right? But I do think that success can come in many forms, especially with newer parties like the PSP. They may not have won seats the last time around, but I would say success in terms of visibility, the fact that they catapulted from, being out of nowhere, like a non-party to now like number 3, right? Having seats as NCMPs, I do think that that's something noteworthy, and to me, that is success. They did have a successful GE2020 run for me.
Yeah, and they will continue to run. Like, look at the horse goal. It's going to keep running. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I'm so sorry to interrupt this conversation, but please do me a favor. Drop us a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button. It takes just 2 seconds, but it really helps make a huge difference in getting more people to discover our conversations. All right, now let's get back into it.
Now, let's focus on the SDP, the Singapore Democratic Party. Under the leadership of Dr. Chee Soon Juan, the SDP has been a persistent voice in Singapore's political arena, advocating for democratic reforms and civil liberties. In recent years, the SDP too has faced challenges. In June 2024, the party was issued a correction notice under POFMA for making false statements. This GE 2025, the SDP has unveiled their Northern Strategy. Now, this includes fielding candidates in Sembawang GRC, Marsiling UT GRC, and the newly formed Sembawang West SMC, where Dr. Chee will stand this year. This comes after Bukit Batok SMC, which the SDP has been contesting since the 90s, was removed as part of this year's electoral boundaries redrawing. The SDP under Dr. Chee has always stood out: bold speeches, unapologetic stance, and an activist spirit. Now, will this approach win over a new generation that is not just accustomed to, but also celebrate these traits? Let's see what the cards have to say.
All right, so the good thing from the Knight of Swords, what I can see here is that he has a very clear point of view. He knows very clearly what he's standing for, and his communication seems pretty clear as well. The problem is what's around him. It's just the competition that is pretty fierce. And when you think of the voter's point of view, right? Sometimes it's not the view that makes the most sense that gets the vote. People vote for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes it's familiarity, sometimes it's peer pressure, sometimes it's just I want to vote because I like the logo. I don't know, I don't know what goes on in people's heads. So how I see him losing out is not for a lack of competence, because I actually see someone who has quite a clear view of what's going on and what he stands for. It's because of the competition around him and it's really hard to control, right? You can put your best foot forward as a competitor, but at the same time, there are so many external reasons that will affect your chances of winning, quote unquote. So that's what I see happening here. It's a bit of a mixed bag, actually, and it's not all within his own control.
For better or worse, many still associate SDP with its more confrontational years, including legal battles and headline-grabbing disputes. Now, even as the party evolves, that shadow still lingers. But is the narrative shifting? Let's see what the cards have to say about their relationship with the public.
As a reputation being a party that is like riddled with past conflicts, legal issues, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I think they will be able to bounce back because of strength over here. Yeah, so whatever conflicts they've had, they managed to smoothen over the conflicts. But with the Eight of Swords, I think the struggle is actually internal. So it's not so much how people perceive them. And if you ask the younger generation, they might not even be fully aware of the history, but definitely internally there are scars, like people still remember within the party. And it also affects perhaps like who they want to work with, or maybe they feel betrayed as well, because Eight of Swords is about being trapped in your own mind. So in a way, the party actually traps itself. It becomes its worst enemy if it cannot move past the conflicts that it has gone through. But to the outside world, it does feel like they have resolved past conflicts and they're able to reconsolidate and regain strength as a party. Yeah.
Okay.
Our minds are our worst enemies, honestly. Whether it's a political party or yourself, it's always like that.
It's true.
They've got detailed policy papers, a visible leader, and decades of experience. Now, what else does the SDP need in order to win seats? Let's ask the cards. What concrete or symbolic moves can the SDP make to be truly seen as viable MPs, not just passionate critics?
What steps could they take?
Or strategies. Yeah.
Okay, so this message is going to be a bit similar to something I've said before because similar cards have shown up. But Seven of Pentacles is about it's always long term.
Yeah.
It's always long term strategy. I think in Singapore it's really difficult to achieve like lightning in a bottle kind of success. And then we have High Priestess here again, which came out for was it PSP earlier? I don't remember. But yeah, High Priestess is about intuition, going with the flow, observing first before acting. So they really do need to think before they act. And it's not about trying to achieve too much as well, but pacing things out and always observing. Yeah, they don't have to be at the forefront of action, actually. They can even be the kind of people who just comment on things. Like maybe the ruling parties can send out a statement or they like enforce a new policy. STP can release another statement in response. So it feels a bit of this like cat and mouse sort of dynamic, but it sort of works for them.
Right.
Yeah, they are the critical observer in a sense.
Zooming out, what is on the cards for the SDP this election? Is it time for a breakthrough, a rebuild, or a reframe? Let's see what the cards have to say about their overall trajectory this GE 2025.
Oh, we have King of Pentacles again, same as the PSP earlier. So again, leadership is going to be a very strong feature. And with the Knight of Pentacles, he is going to also have supporters within the party. So I think whoever his right-hand people are or the close team that he's working with feels very solid. And they're also going to gain supporters on the ground, but not in astronomical amounts, small, bit by bit at a time. And it's because they are asserting themselves as very reliable people and actually similar to PSP. So what both of them have in common in terms of causes that they can foreground is really bread and butter stuff, like just walking around an estate and trying to find out what people are unhappy with, even if it is just what we perceive as like maybe small things like the smell of trash or having like sheltered walkways. It seems small, but that's what immediately impacts people. And the other thing is also about income, salary, housing. Those are bigger issues, but also as tangible to everyday life. So that's something SDP and PSP have in common. Like if they can find a footing in these particular issues, they can really gain pretty stable supporters who will continue voting for them and maybe even get their children to vote for them later on. Yeah, that's the kind of long term that I'm talking about for the suit of pentacles.
Let's wrap up today's episode with Singapore's other opposition parties. While they may not have the prominence of the larger parties, their roles contribute to the diversity of political discourse here in the country. In Singapore's opposition landscape, parties have experimented with alliances to strengthen their electoral presence. Now, there are 3 noteworthy ones, and the memberships have seen some changes, but as of this recording, there is firstly the PAR, the People's Alliance for Reform, which includes the PV, RP, and DPP. The PPP left. And then there is the SDA, Singapore Democratic Alliance, which now includes the PKMS as well as the SJP. Both the NSP and SPP left, but they formed the coalition with SUP and RDU. But the RDU left. This leaves the RDU and PPP to be running solo. Beyond party structures, there are also independent candidates, individuals who run without a party affiliation. However, without the backing of a party's machinery, they face an uphill battle in terms of visibility and resources. As the political landscape evolves, the reality is that these smaller parties and independents face the challenge of distinguishing themselves and resonating with voters amidst all the noise, limited resources, and minimal media exposure. But will one of the underdogs finally surprise us? Let's see what the cards have to say about a possible breakthrough. Nicole Seah was once the breakout star of 2011, a fresh face from a small party, the NSP, who captured national attention. Since then, it's been rare for someone outside of the larger parties to make that kind of splash. Can that kind of momentum still happen? Are there personalities waiting to shine from the fringes? Let's see what the cards have to say.
And Nicole Seah is exactly the demographic the Page of Wands covers, because pages in traditional tarot are young women. Yeah, very young women. And Nicole Seah was what, 24 when she made her
I
debut?
don't remember. Yeah.
Early
Very
20s,
young,
right? Early
yes.
mid-20s. So possible. Gender isn't so important here, but it's more of the age and the vibe that they give off, very youthful. So there is a chance for someone to break out of those parties. And even the Knight of Cups, also younger. So people who are, I would say, below 40 at the very least. Yeah, these people have a chance to have their voice be heard. And then the feeling is very different from all of the pentacles that we got earlier, right? For PSP, SDP, they were very stable. Older people are at the helm. Wands and Cups here is more there's more excitement. There's also more charm as well. So that's how they can actually gain people's attention. Yeah, through that sort of charisma.
Alliances like the People's Alliance for Reform are attempting to pool resources and avoid 3-cornered fights. But will these coalitions be cohesive and credible, or chaotic and confusing? After all, not long ago we saw the RDU leaving the coalition. Let's draw the cards to see the energy surrounding these opposition tie-ups.
So we have 10 of Cups here. So this is the card about community, family, and it's interesting that we're talking about coalition, right? So there is different people coming together. So I do see this actually being a viable option. Yeah. And then with the King of Pentacles, again, this card has come up at least 3 times now. It's about having strong leadership at the forefront. So even if there are people coming together, the leaders really, really matter the most. And they do tend to be older men. That's the demographic of the King of Pentacles. Yeah, maybe gender not so important, but definitely age and experience, very, very important. But if you're asking generally, is a coalition or like an Avengers sort of situation viable? I would say yes with both of these cards together. Like they're both yes cards.
Without big teams, deep pockets of mainstream media airtime, smaller parties often have higher barriers to overcome. But sometimes, creativity can trump capacity. What kinds of strategies or even personas could help them stand out this GE?
They need to move away from an old way of doing things. And in this situation, for this context, I would say it's seeing each other as individual parties. Yeah, so they need to move away from an old kind of behavior or pattern of thinking and Two of Wands is to set their sights on the future and to be ambitious. Like really, they can try to push harder. I think maybe the tendency is to feel disheartened, right? Because there really seems to be a very strong status quo in Singapore. But as you were sharing earlier, success is relative. And I think they actually have chances for success if they can define that within realistic means, because Two of Wands is a very, very hopeful card. And they have that you can see the man is here and there are two wands behind. So they already have good resources on their side. Like they are able to put into reality a vision that they have, but it's not what they were planning before. It's going to be something new.
Let's finish with the long view. Now, with these parties and independents, what's the vibe this GE? Are there potential disruptors? Let's see what the cards have to say.
Okay, so Six of Cups, the support that they have would be in groups and places that they already have support in, because Six of Cups is about the past. So there is a connection to tapping into past demographics and people. And then with the Ace of Cups over here, there is a chance to win over new hearts, because Ace of Cups is a new relationship, actually.
Right.
So new relationship can also be them coming together to form a new relationship. It goes two ways. It's party to party, but also party to public. So I see a lot of interpersonal interactions happening. Maybe they feel warmer as well, like each of them, but also all of them together if should they choose to bond. So there is a feeling of approachability, very friendly, affable, and they're trying to make themselves seem as like we're the friends, we're like your buddies, we're like your kakis, that's the kind of vibe that I feel. And whether it translates to, or what it translates to in the GE, I think is actually gaining more supporters. Yeah, but not from super unexpected places. It feels more of like people they've already managed to touch before in the past.
Right. Cool. That's it. We've done everything that we wanted to do. How do you
Ooh,
feel?
so fun. This is actually my first time doing such an extensive political tarot reading. It's not my first time doing politics and tarot, but I love it because it was so systematic. Like as you went through every party, it also forced me to kind of like refresh and rehash my knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty about tarot is that, I guess number one, it forces you not to take things too seriously.
Yeah.
And number two, it's very intuitive. So I think when you are also assessing like your own views, using the tarot can also help you to uncover your own biases. Like,
It's true.
yeah,
It's
to
true.
really figure
Yeah.
out like what kind of values you have as a voter, what kind of people you're drawn towards, like all of that. Actually, I think tarot is fantastic in revealing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was it like for you though?
It was so fun, right? You have no idea. I was like salivating at everything. It was so much fun for me. Just to confirm, like there's only one card, one type of card each in the deck, right?
Yes, but then there are four kings, four queens, etc.
Right,
because
right.
four different suits.
So I thought it was very interesting that like the King of Pentacles kept coming up. Like what does it say
Yeah,
to
so King
you?
of Pentacles in traditional tarot is like, it's the archetype of an older man, a very wise man who has been through a lot. And what's interesting is that King of Pentacles tends to be a bit of a self-made person. It doesn't have to be like inherited wealth, but they are rich through the efforts of their own labor. So I think if I remember correctly, but please go back and fact check, King of Pentacles came up for PSP, came up for SDP,
SDP, yeah.
and perhaps even, was it for the smaller parties, the other
think so,
parties
yeah.
too? So there's this common theme of men who have, maybe they started out a little bit lower in life, or they really had to work super hard to have the status that they do now. That is a common archetype that's coming up, and I think people really like that so far. Maybe it might change, but that seems to be the archetype that people resonate towards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Final question for you. I mean, you've been through now like 5 different segments that we went through, or 5 different readings. What is your general feeling as to how this election will be like, in general for young people like us?
You know what's interesting for me is that I actually kind of tuned out of GE politics and discussion for a while, because I was more involved in ground up movements,
Okay.
like more mutual aid things that are happening on the fringe. But tuning into this has made me realize that it's all connected. And I think it's so important to understand sentiments and whatever is happening, top down, bottom up, and to piece it all together. So I thought it was just such a refreshing experience. And I'm so glad you invited me on
Awesome.
board. Like, I love spreading the tarot agenda literally anywhere, but especially for this, because I think it could get people interested. Like, politics is relevant and it is just, it's really woven into our everyday life. And if you can find a way to make it relatable, I'm so
Yeah.
glad to have been a part of that.
I'm so glad you said yes, because I was a bit nervous, like to even raise it up to you. What if you think I'm like weird or crazy, right? But to me,
I mean,
it's
I'm
like
weird and crazy, so
I, I really did enjoy. We did a reading together at a pop up event, and I did really enjoy that. And with that one experience of 15-minute reading, I actually talked to so many people about you, and then some of them actually went to you for readings, and again, it was positive feedback. So then I thought there was a little bit of trust there already. And I think with the listeners of this show as well, I think, you know, not all of us are like always reading about politics or reading the news, and people who do sometimes maybe kind of look down on people who don't really do that, right? And
which
I'm
is
like,
not very fair to them either,
yeah,
right? You can't
because
choose the background that you're born into as well.
absolutely. And also, we all have different priorities. For some of us, it's not politics. We just don't care sometimes. But I think from what I noticed from speaking with the people who listen to this show is that they don't want to make um, dumb decisions. They don't want to make they want to be informed when they go into the voting booth. Perhaps if they just want to know it from the easiest way possible, they don't want to read the news every day. And I think that the podcast has become kind of like a simple platform for them to say, okay, I just have to listen to maybe 5 episodes, 6 episodes, and I can have more or less an idea of like what I want to do, to where I want to go for this when I vote, in the elections. And I think that's what I wanted to continue. And I thought the tarot reading is a bit different. I don't think your traditional media can do anything like this. But I do think this is perfect for the audience that this show particularly appeals to. So yeah, I'm so glad that we did this, and I'm hoping that they don't see it as just like predictions, right? It's more so like a reflection and reflective exercise for them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think use it to understand the political landscape, but also understand yourself as a voter, first and foremost. And of course, goes without saying, but the personal is political, always.
It's true. All right. Thank you so much, Elaine.
Thank you, Joel.
Well, I hope you enjoyed a tarot-infused look at what could be in store this GE. Now, of course, tarot is not about definitive answers or certainties, but what it does offer is a different perspective, a way to reflect on the political landscape, the energies at play, and the possible trajectories ahead. At the end of the day, what actually happens will be decided not by the cards, but by us, the voters. So whether you're feeling hopeful, uncertain, or just more curious about how this election will unfold, the most important thing is to stay informed, pay attention, and most importantly, show up when it counts. A big thank you to Elaine Mok, Miss Tarot on the Moon, for lending us her insight and intuition into this episode. And if you enjoyed this one, let me know. Maybe we will revisit the cards once the dust has settled. This episode is just one part of our GE 2025 special, where we are breaking down different aspects of the upcoming election. So if you haven't already, make sure to check out the other episodes this special season as well. Make sure to subscribe to Political Prude on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, Instagram, and TikTok, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of our coverage. If you like this episode, leave a review on your favorite platform and share it with your friends. I'll see you on the next episode of Political Prude, the podcast.